There is a big shift in the housing market according to an article from Mortgage News Daily. Now, is this a good or bad thing for home buyers? We're going to take a look at that today and more. Hey, what is going on, everybody? This is your daily dose of real estate. My name is Lewis, and before we jump into it, if you wouldn't mind just hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and leave a comment. The comments really help me as well as others learn and grow. Without further ado, let's get right to it. So this is a great article by Matthew Graham. It is titled Big Shift in Housing Numbers. Is this scary or welcome? The housing market has been keeping its head down, keeping calm, and carrying on in the face of the biggest rate spike since the 1980s. Now, the ability to tune out rising rates is nothing new for housing prices. The same is often true for home sales, but sales tend to show more of an impact than prices. The following chart shows several of the biggest rate spikes of the past decade in conjunction with new home sales. And yes, they do look small in comparison to 2022, so we'll look at that here in just a second. One could argue that prices leveled off in 2018 as rates continue to rise, but the only case for immediate impact is on the sales front. Even then, it's minimal. So let's take a look at this chart here. Let me pull it into the frame just a little bit better. So we have in 2013 to 2014, you saw mortgage rates rise. As a result, you saw prices come down or even flatten, and then sales activity dropped a little bit here, although it's relatively stable. Now, if you go back to 2017, you saw a big spike in rates. Look at prices. They actually came down or stayed relatively stable. Now, sales activity in this case didn't get impacted too much. Go into 2018, rates went up. Prices stayed flat to declining a little bit, and sales activity actually went down pretty dramatically. But what's interesting, if you look at 2022, look at the massive spike in interest rates. Now look at where prices are. They have shot up. They have not gone down at this point. We're going to have to see how the weeks and months unfold to see if this trend reverses. But with that said, look at the number of sales. We saw a dramatic decrease in the amount of actual sales activity. So this is telling me that buyers are starting to think twice. It's getting more expensive, and this is a big shift for the housing market. The article goes on to say that whatever it was that accounts for the resilience in the past, it's clear that something new is happening right now. Moreover, it is happening quickly. Just last month, new home sales were still higher than any other time in the last 12 years leading up to the pandemic. Now, in this week's new numbers from the Census Bureau, new home sales have plummeted to nearly the lowest level in 5+ years. Now, the article goes on to say that pending home sales painted an even bleaker picture 2 days after the new home sales data. You can see that there was a major reduction in pending home sales here. Now, in addition to that, the article goes on to say that prices have surged unsustainably. Whether you're talking about new or existing homes, prices have surged at the fastest pace on record. So if you go back to March of 2020, right as we were entering the pandemic, you can see a massive spike in home prices, both either new home sales and existing. So the blue is existing home sales and this orange is new home sales. Huge spike. And then more recently, they've started to come down a little bit. So these price surges, they're saying, is unsustainable. So we're going to have to see what happens here moving into the future. So one of the reasons they say price growth is not sustainable is because we have not seen nearly the same level of wage growth. So you can see here this green line represents wage growth. It has come up a little bit. Looks like they're up about 5-6% year over year, which is great. But then look at home prices. They've just shot to the moon. So based on kind of the information and the data they're talking about here, it sounds like they think that prices are likely to come down. And then, of course, rates have actually skyrocketed. So you see this massive spike in home prices. And then more recently, in Q1 of 2022, we've seen a huge spike in interest rates. So those are some of the cross currents right now that are really hitting home buyers very hard. Now, inventory isn't helping too much. You can see existing home inventory has gone up slightly. We're sitting just over 2 months. But what's even more interesting is we've seen a massive spike in the amount of inventory of new homes. So that new home inventory is sitting on the market longer, and builders are having a much harder time selling it. The bottom line is that the housing market hasn't exactly turned on a dime to the extent suggested by the drop in new home sales. That said, there are signs of cooling. Just this week, the National Association of Realtors noted an uptick in inventory versus the same time last year. Homes for sale were up 9% year over year. This is the fastest pace NAR has recorded since it began tracking the data back in 2017. So the reality is that mortgage interest rates rising has cooled things down a little bit. We are seeing more inventory hit the market. market, but it doesn't mean that the market is just turning on the dime and all of a sudden we're ready to crash. In fact, it just looks like we're getting to a point where things are more stable. So what did you think of the article from Mortgage News Daily and those charts that they provided? I found the information really interesting. Obviously, something different is happening in the market that we haven't seen in the past. We've seen a huge spike in interest rates. As a result, home sales activity is dropping pretty substantially, but home prices have not gotten hit at this point, or at least not dramatically. So only time will tell. What do you think is going to happen? Leave it in the comments below. Do you think we're headed for a more balanced market, or do you think prices are going to come down? We would love to hear from you. Now, if you haven't done so already, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you on the next video. Take care.